distinguishing among mastery, innovation, creativity, and visionary creativity, and I would add problem solving. So here we are with also problem solving. And we start with mastery, and what comes to mind is the 10,000 hours thing. And we find that in lots of books. But it was originated by K. Anders Ericsson. The conclusion was it takes about 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, working on techniques, seeking feedback, and addressing weaknesses to master something. Now, just practicing it doesn't do it. If you keep repeating what you already know, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you push yourself, and they look at things like soccer, and they look at how soccer players get control of the ball, and it looks like, they grab the ball with their foot, but there's actually maybe 50 distinct motions going on to do that. And they'll work for hours on each one of the 50 different things to eventually, and somebody who's not mastered it, the ball just gets taken away from them. They don't know what hit them. But then he looks at chess, music, various sports, tennis. In every one, he identifies it's pressing yourself repeatedly, pushing forward, doing new stuff, repeating it until you're mastering it, then adding yet more stuff, etc. And 10,000 hours is about 10 years. So if you say, well, to go to architecture school, Pratt, is 5 years, 5 years in an office, then, there's your 10 years, there's your 10,000 hours. Law school is 3 years plus 4 years of college, it's 7 years, 3 years in an office, and there's your 10,000 hours. So it seems to be what it takes. It takes 10 years before you have a chance to become a concert violinist. And Gladwell goes on to say, Mozart was a musical genius at the age of 4 or 5. And he says, no, you look at that Twinkle Twinkle Little Star thing he wrote, it's not mastery, it's immature, and it's not till he hit 10,000 hours that he becomes Mozart. I don't agree. I think the stuff is there very early, but, I'm certainly not an expert. Then he points out the Beatles got stranded in Hamburg, Germany for a few years, playing in stupid clubs, and they put in their practice. So what's my counter argument? Yeah, Elvis didn't do any 10,000 hours. He walked into Sun Records. He said they had a service where they could cut a record for you. You could sing into the mic. They'd cut a record. And he was happy birthday to his mother. They cut the record, and the receptionist said, "We're not letting you leave." And he was Elvis from day one. And again, you can argue about that, but I think that key thing to keep in mind is that this mastery stuff shows up in too many books on creativity. Being first violinist is not being a composer. Now, I don't want to put down first violinist. There is creativity in orchestral playing. It's always interpreted. But it's not the same thing as being Mozart, as being Beethoven, as being Stravinsky and composing. So what we'll talk about in this course is where does that come from? So mastery is not visionary creativity. Problem solving. Now, my mother studied psychology, took a psychology course at Barnard, which was a women's version of Columbia University. Women could not go to Columbia when she was a girl, so they went to Barnard. And they could take the Columbia courses, but they were registered in Barnard. And she would say, the typical psychological test is, what can you think of to do with bricks? Make bookshelves. Take bricks and boards, he can make bookshelves. Like, okay. Well, today's example of that is called the candle problem. And I was familiar with it, but I didn't, I listen to more books in audio than I read. So if I read, I remember what book it was and even where in the book it was, roughly. But in audio, it's like I remember where I was when I heard it. But that doesn't help me find it. So I just go online, and it's right there in Wikipedia. And the question is, you've got a book of matches, a box of thumbtacks, and a candle. How do you stick the candle to the wall in such a way that it will not drip on the table underneath? You think, well, you can like stick the tacks on either side of the candle, but that won't grab them. You put it in the middle of the candle, you'll smash it. How do you what?
Put the candle in the box and put the box on the wall with the tacks.
Good for you. Ta-da! So this is I don't know what this is supposed to prove, but it's a kind of thinking outside the box. In other words, you said, well, the box is just to hold the tacks. No, the box is the solution. And you don't see the box. Now, I'm going to pause for something. And if anybody has ever done this, don't say anything. And if you, as you watch it, don't say anything. But just watch this YouTube. So we're going to watch a YouTube that's a psychological study, and it's going to ask us to count something. So hang on.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball.
Now there's black and white, so only white.
How many passes did you count?
What's the trick? How many people saw it? One? Only one people. Two. Two people saw it.
The gorilla in the middle?
Three. Four. You saw it? How many people didn't see it?
Well, I saw the gorilla.
Okay. How many people did not see the gorilla?
Oh.
Everybody saw the gorilla? Good for you. I didn't. The first time I saw this.
Multitask.
Did the gorilla walk
The
into the
correct
middle and
answer
go one?
is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla?
Did anybody not see the gorilla? Everybody saw the gorilla. Huh.
It's kind of hard to miss.
Because it's like it's something really.
This video is from research by Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris and is copyrighted. It is available for use in talks, training, and teaching
We're a
on
little too
DVDs from
ADHD.
VizCog Productions. Learn more at theinvisiblegorilla.com.
So it's a test of selective perception. So that's problem solving. Then there's innovation. One can master one's discipline and perform well without ever creating anything new. Creating something new is innovation. Now, we're in a competitive world economy today, and jobs, industries moving abroad, globalism, and people are worried about where's my water? So people are worried about, are we innovative? And I said at the beginning of the book that on an economic level, we can be innovative or work for lower wages. You can be competitive by working for lower wages, or you can innovate totally new things and try to be productive with them before someone else steals them. But because most of them now are just ideas and forms of software. But there's a lot of interest in innovation. So what is innovation? How is it taught? How do we encourage it? And a book I was really impressed with, Where Good Ideas Come From. It's a book I've reread once. When I say read, that can mean listen to. I get in bed, and I have a book. Do I want to read a book or do I want to watch a rerun of Big Bang Theory? And I usually watch a rerun of Big Bang Theory. But I've got dozens of books on my phone. So 7 key elements in innovation. And these are really interesting ideas. The adjacent possible, for which he uses an image of a series of connected rooms, each with a door in each of its 4 walls. So you can move, you come into a room, there are 4 doors. You don't want to go back the door you came in, but there are 3 other doors. You go through one of them, there's another room with 4 doors. So each of these new rooms is an innovation, let's say. And the point he's making is you can only innovate in steps. You have to be here to get there. You can't skip to the last room. So as you move from room to room, you continually have new possibilities, but you can never skip a room. Innovation can only be built on what is already established. So you can't make laptop computers without the chip. If we still had vacuum tubes, which is what we used before we had transistors, you'd have a pretty hard time getting. How many transistors are in the CPU in this computer? It's about 4 billion. You have a hard time getting 4 billion vacuum tubes in here. So you can't make a laptop until you've got the chip. You can't make a chip till you've got the transistor. So bing, 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 there's these steps. Liquid networks, which provide support for innovation. So that's a complex idea, but you see cities all over the world are building support networks. Does anybody know what WeWorks is? Tell me, what is WeWorks? Right. So the availability of that will help young companies get off the ground. Like I launched an online company about 20 years ago. And I got a 21-year-old high school dropout techie and from Chicago. We brought him to New York. And we had a loft space about twice the size of this room in the meatpacking district when it was the meatpacking district. I come in the morning and there's dead cows hanging. You walk among to get to my office. They're being hauled in there and butchered for delivery to all the grocery stores. Now it's a high fashion district, and the trendy hotels are there, and the High Line is there. But we had Cisco routers, a half dozen computers. Oh, the internet didn't even exist. We used bulletin board software, hobbyist bulletin board software, which could do everything the internet can do, but much slower. We used phone lines. We had dozens of phone lines that were all hooked into. Everything we did, you can now do with one laptop. So that makes it, I burned through my clients about $250,000. And then we folded. The company didn't work, we folded it. Now it would cost $1,500 for the investment in the company. I'd have to pay the techie, but that's it. I wouldn't need the loft and the phones and the T1 line, which is your cable TV is 100 times the T1 line, and on and on. So that's the platform being there. And then all over are springing up, what are they called to encourage young companies? incubation spaces. So this is like WeWorks, but it might be free. They give you a scholarship, and it's got equipment, Xerox machines, printers, phone lines, receptionists, conference room. And if you get selected, you're there for 2 years, and you get a mentor. So I'm working with a business online, teaching online, that went through all that. So that's networks that help innovation happen. So you're not out there saying, where do I find a garage? What's the most famous garage in Silicon Valley? What company?
Steve Jobs.
That's the second one. The first one is Hewlett-Packard. And Hewlett-Packard did a lot to create the Silicon Valley culture. And the head of Hewlett-Packard was Steve Jobs' mentor. But it's called, and what, with Facebook, what replaced the Silicon Valley garage?
Harvard Dorm.
Right, the Harvard dorm room. So that's Liquid Network, that there be in the culture stuff to support you. It could be people, equipment, just the available. One of the things that crashed my company was that we got a T1 line, which is a high-speed internet connection, and it was sabotaged by the phone company because we got it by something called Metropolitan Fiber, which was competing with AT&T, and they sabotaged it. And I'm there with no internet connection, using phone lines. Okay, the slow hunch, in which ideas may germinate for years before crystallizing. I don't have it with me, it's upstairs. I have a book on the architect Louis Kahn. It's my second book. I did another book on Kahn called Between Silence and Light. It's been in print for 40 years. But my new book, well, I'll give you another example. This book here. This is based on a thesis I did in 1967. And then 15 years ago, well, let's say 10 years ago, I decided to write a book called Letters to a Young Architect. My agent said, that's too general. Make it, I'm sorry, it's too specific. Make it creativity in general. There isn't enough architects to Letters to a Young Architect. So this was from bubbling ideas that were literally decades and certainly years of before it crystallized into this book. So that's slow hunch. The serendipity of accidental connection. Well, that would be, for example, my agent saying, don't make it a book for architects, make it a book on creativity. So there's, how do you like that? Or somebody introduced me to somebody, they were a big company, they wanted to go online, and so I got the job of creating their online division. But that's serendipitous interconnections. Errors. That's a favorite one of mine. So what did Einstein say about his cosmological constant? Anybody know the story? Einstein's equations said either the universe is expanding or contracting. So, well, we know it's just sitting there. So there's a problem. So I'm going to introduce this factor into my equations that will make it stop expanding the universe and make it stay stable. 10 years later, oh my God, the universe is expanding. The famous quote is, he said, it was my greatest blunder to do that. But it was an error. And today, the universe rate of expansion is accelerating. The rate is it's expanding faster and faster. So we need the universal constant again. So it turns out he was right. So, errors. Expectation, the repurposing of already existing ideas in unforeseen ways. I think that's really important. And it's sort of what I was talking about when we mentioned lateral thinking. But it's, there's this thing going on in painting, which I think impacts what we're thinking about in cosmology or computer science or whatever. So that's bringing together seemingly unrelated ideas. And then platforms on which innovations can be built. Well, platform is really big today. The single biggest platform right now is the cloud. So, for example, or again, going back to my online company, we had about a dozen computers with arrays of hard disk and storing stuff and stuff like that. Today, you can do all that on a cloud, Amazon's cloud or IBM's cloud. So the biggest clouds is first is Amazon, then Google, then I think Microsoft, and then IBM. And they provide cloud services or platforms. But it's not just raw storage. They'll do your computation, they provide the software, they provide support. So whole things where it might have taken years and huge amounts of money to put together all the pieces, it's all there. It's called a platform. So if you want to be an artist and you want to show in a gallery, the whole thing is there. I'm going to see if I can open a window. We're getting hot in here. There are magazines. So those are platforms. Just the idea that when Jobs and Wozniak created the Apple I, they go for a few $1 million today because there's only a few of them. They could bring it to the homebrew club and where hobbyists would buy them. So that was a platform where they could sell their stuff, interact with other people, get ideas, get support, etc. Does anybody know what Steve Jobs' first product was? Anybody hear of a blue box? The phone company used to work with a dial. And if it goes back 6 times, that's a 6. That's a 7. So that's a dial. Then they introduced push buttons. Beep, 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 boop, boop, beep, beep, boop, boop. The push button, which we still have today. So if you use a phone, you push these buttons. It makes tones. Those tones, what are there, about 12 buttons on the phone. 12 different tones. And those tones will activate the phone company. It'll route your call to Chicago. The one says we're staying in the United States. The 215 says we want to go get to San Francisco. The 478 means this exchange. And then the 2626 is Joe. So you do all that work of routing your call by pushing those buttons. Well, there are other tones which are used for internally in the phone company, like international calls, overseas, billing, all the stuff they do are these other tones. Well, some idiot in the phone company published a technical article identifying all those tones. So then hackers created these little boxes that would make these tones. And these hackers would then pull up at a payphone out in the desert in their Volkswagen bus and plug into the payphone and call their buddies all over the world. My best friend in school went off to Caltech and was doing that. And one day, this knock on his mother's door, and they said, "Hi, this is a phone company. I'm from the FBI. You owe us $3,500 for your son's long-distance calls." So, anyway, they were called phone freaks, and Steve Jobs manufactured and sold blue boxes. So that was his first product.
Wait, that's the hacker thing?
That's what you used to make the tones to route the calls and talk to your friend in Germany for free. Now, And that was a big deal because I remember long distance was so expensive. I mean, when my wife, late wife died, my girlfriend was in California, it was like $300 or $400 a month to talk long distance. Now it's free. It's just you get unlimited with your phone. But it wasn't then, 10 years ago. And when I was a student, I was meeting my buddies in France, and we're going to motorcycle around Europe and North Africa. I had to coordinate where do I get the motorcycle? Where am I going to meet you guys? What's the address of your apartment? So I sent a letter saying, we'll have a phone call at this time. And I told all my roommates, with 5 of us in the house, don't worry, there's going to be, $40 on the phone bill. I'm going to take care of it. And then I called them with a watch. Don't go over 1 minute. Or it'll be $80. So those phone boxes were a good deal. And there's a famous guy named Captain Crunch. I forget his name. But he discovered that the whistle you got in Captain Crunch cereal made the key tone for what you need on the phone. So he got put in jail. And while he was in jail, he created the first word processor for the IBM PC. So they're all these heroes of the Silicon era. But platforms is what enables you to then do this stuff. So who's this? Dyson. What's his first name? Anybody know? So he makes this vacuum cleaner with the ball. Now he makes these fans that they're just expensive. I don't know what the big deal is, but
Heating and cooling. Don't put your finger.
No, the fans like deep inside.
Yeah, don't put your finger.
Say again?
So you can't put your finger.
Oh, okay. Now, what's he working on in secret? He's annoyed that somebody let the cat out of the bag. He's making an electric car. So everybody's waiting. And Apple is too. Is Apple going to spring something on us? So, ordinary creativity. And as I said, we all have opinions about people, psychology, marriage, sex, government, democracy, socialism, capitalism. Psychologists and sociologists, their opinions are no better than ours, except they decorate them with lots of jargon and promote themselves as being important. So I didn't find anything in any book on creativity. I did on innovation, but not creativity. And I read all the books. So it's interesting to see how approaches to creativity reflect the social ethos of the time. When individual achievement was valued, we were told that creativity comes from rare individuals of genius. So 50 years ago, kids in school were told to study about Thomas Edison. And he invented all this stuff, the movies, the Victrola, the light bulb. And you too could become a Thomas Edison if you apply yourself. Now we're saying Thomas Edison stole all his ideas, he's nobody important, and you've got to work in a group. Now, I don't think anything's changed. I think just about what makes good creativity. I think the opinions of sociologists have changed about what they want people to do. Now they want them to cooperate in groups.
But don't you think that that's kind of similar to what you said about when the printing press is invented? Like, the way that people are thinking is changing. Don't you think that we're thinking in more of a group setting now, and that's why they're having these findings?
I think so.
Yeah, so I don't think that the findings are necessarily, like, wrong or...
Well, no, they're never right or wrong. I mean, who's to say what people should do? If you say should...
It's just reflective of what's happening, I think.
It's reflective of a mood of the time. Now, it may be if got to see how I choose my words. It may be if you want to be a conformist and be successful in established organizations, you want to accept established ideas, work with them, and you can move up the organization. If you think all that is BS and you're a true genius, you might want to stay in your basement and do your thing. And you might say, society needs both. And which one you choose is dependent on what works for you. But I don't think that you can argue that either one. So individualism is the moral stance, political philosophy, ideology, or social outlook that emphasizes the moral worth of the individual. Individualism and society. Okay, no, we're not going to go through all this. But should individuals contribute and be subservient to the social order? Or is the society there to support individuals in their manifestation of their individuality? And I think it's not answerable because it's an issue of values. What did John F. Kennedy famously say in his inaugural address that no leading politician has said since? Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. So there's a call to participate in the society. Who is the very controversial but greatest exponent of individualism philosophically? Extremely popular in certain circles. 2 books. Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. So she's an exponent of radical individualism. So I quote her and then a guy named Sendrick. But the other one is there's a movement called communitarianism. Now, we no longer promote communism because it looks like in the 20th century communism killed about 100 million people. So that ain't looking so good. But we still want to promote, is there a gentler form of communal interaction that goes beyond self-serving radical individualism? And we find that in communitarianism. Communitarianism is a philosophy that emphasizes the connection between the individual and the community. Its overriding philosophy is based on the belief that a person's social identity and personality are largely molded by community relationships, with a smaller degree of development being placed on individualism. So I would say, as a philosophical and value system, you might oppose communitarianism and individualism. Coming to a definition, creativity is the bringing into being of something new that was not previously obvious and that exhibits beauty or utility. I don't think that's a not useful definition, but that's what they give us. In other words, nobody has any idea what creativity is. If you go, again, as I go through the books, what I find is mostly stringing together words that don't really mean anything. I don't have any trouble with visionary creativity. We'll spend time with that. So, creating an elegant meal might be being creative. Baking a cake might be being creative. But it's not what I'm calling visionary creativity. So I'm going to repeat this quite a bit. And because this really sums up my entire book, and then it takes 250 pages to unpack it. So visionary creatives swim in the culture of their day. In other words, we don't live in an objective reality. We live in a culture. And, many cultures, different people in different cultures, dominant cultures, global, other cultures in other countries, but whatever culture we're talking about. By swim, I mean I'm trying to convey are immersed in and successfully. They're not drowning in the culture of their day. They swim in the culture of their day. And manifest in their work the spirit of the age. Spirit of the age is same as culture of the day. That's manifest in their work. So when we saw Michelangelo's David, this is as tall as 3 people. This is 17 feet tall. This was really, this blew people away. And it's all hanging out there, which was new. There were male nudes before, but this is, and what's this doing? It's asserting a new vision of what a human being is. So it's tying us back to saying we're descendants of Greece and Rome. So here we are, ancient Greek sculpture, actually a Roman copy. So very strong similarity. He's saying we revive our connections to Greece and Rome, jumping past medieval Christianity back to Greece and Rome. And then, see if I can get a bigger image. Look at those furrowed brows. There's a thinking brain behind those eyes. There's an individual psychological person in there, engaged in thinking. And just a couple hundred years earlier, there's not a psychological person in back of these eyes. It's kind of a universal spirituality rather than an individual psychology. So we're up to spirit of the age. So this emergence of humanism, the importance of the individual thinking human being with an individual psychological character rooted in classical Greece, is what is being put forward as a philosophical idea, but through art rather than writing. Philosophers in writing are saying the same thing. So Michelangelo is part of that. The things they create. And then I say it's not just art. In art, design, science, technology, business. So Facebook can be a creation projecting a new vision of what a human being is. Embody that spirit at the same time, stretching us, reforming our neural paths, and pulling us into the future. So how it does that is what we'll be talking about over the course of this course. But here is a painting, Madonna of the Rocks, by Leonardo. And here is Isaac Newton and Principia Mathematica. The rational organized universe presented by Newtonian space and time is what is being presented in Renaissance perspective. So this is a vision of what the world can be. Here's a totally different one. Salvador Dali's Melting Watches, time is flexible. And in Einstein's relativity, time is flexible. Depends upon the observer. And then today, this is Robert Noyce, one of the inventors of the chip, the integrated circuit, putting multiple transistors on one piece of silicon. And then how that changes the world when given a graphical user interface that we all can use. Anybody? I don't think so. Anybody ever used DOS on a computer? Pretty horrible, right? So if you're typing and you want an italic word, you just type and hit Control I, Control I again, back, and you got an italic word. In DOS, you go Control space, caret, the word, Control space, counter caret, it stops being, you know. And you have to remember all that for every single thing you want to do. You know, just, you had to keep a telephone book full of instructions next to your computer just to remember how to print something. How do you print? And you just go, menu, print. Well, it's not that way in DOS. So this changes the world. Hello. This is the first graphical user interface. Well, one of the first. Jobs created something called the Lisa, which did it all earlier, but that was a more expensive computer. So it's my contention that culture is a stage on which we live out our lives. In the Renaissance, it's a stage of uniform space and time. And uniform space, you can identify where this is, okay, Leonardo da Vinci, a sketch for Adoration of the Magi, the three wise men coming to visit the baby Christ. And he liked it so much he never made the painting. He didn't want to cover it up. He liked this drawing. And these lines of perspective orient us in this space. Totally different world from this one of the early 20th century of Einstein's relativity, in which space and time are bendable. And now, today's string theory. We'll talk about what that is. And looking forward, today and tomorrow, our world is no longer what we have thought it to be, and a new world is struggling to be born. Visionaries are driven to bring this new world to all of us. So I'm going to spend some time in this course talking about what I think our world is all about today, and that stage on which creativity will happen in our emerging future. So any questions about all this?